Hi everyone, and welcome to this new Cubzh video, where we're going to explore Cubzh's AI tools and how these modern techniques can make creating games even easier and quicker. And of course, many thanks to Cubzh for sponsoring this episode. So today we're going to talk about the engine's AI API, and how it can allow us to quickly create either text or images using just a few lines of Lua code. Okay, now let's just dive in, open up Cubzh, and see how to actually benefit from those tools. The first step, of course, is to create or load a Cubzh world so that we can try a few things in the code. So for this tutorial, I'm personally going to start from a new world, and once it's loaded, replace the default world code with something way simpler that just instantiates my avatar. Note that if you want to learn more about this chunk of logic, we actually talked about it in details in this previous video of the series. Okay, so first, let's have a look at the Cubzh AI API that allows us to generate text. As you might have guessed, it's based on the super popular ChatGPT tool that makes it easy to create a context and discuss with a chatbot in a fairly realistic way. So here we're going to have our player character speak little sentences whenever we click on a block in the map, just as if our avatar was reacting to the world around it. So just before we go into the AI stuff, let's start by adding the pointer.click function to react to a click on the screen, and in this function we can use the castray method on this pointer event to check what's in front of our player avatar at the position of the click. Note that in this tutorial, I'm not going to dive into the intricacies of recasts, but of course, if you're curious, feel free to drop a comment down below to suggest a follow-up episode on that topic. Okay, so we'll get back the impacted block and check its color. The idea in this world will be to associate each color to a specific type of terrain. For example, some tints of green are the grass, the light brown is the soil, the trunk and leaves are the trees, etc. And this way we'll be able to know what kind of block we've just hit with a mouse. Now of course you can put as many or as little mapping as you want in this reference Lua table, cause our loop will just ignore anything that is not in the table. Now you see that if we republish our game and test it out, whenever we left click on a block in the map, we get a little print that tells us what type it is. So that's pretty cool, and now it's time to actually use this data in an AI-powered chat, to have our character utter new sentences on those blocks each time we click on them. And in truth, thanks to Cubzh APIs, it's really easy to do. All we have to do is use the AI:create_chat API to create a new ChatGPT discussion, which we can store in some AI chat variable and just pass it the context of this conversation. Now, if you're a bit familiar with ChatGPT, or if you've watched the video that I made previously on this topic, you know that this context, also called the pre-prompt, plays a big role in how the chatbot reacts, and what kind of answers it generates. To put it simply, this determines the character that ChatGPT should play, the role it should have, and in turn, it changes the style of its answers to better fit your own use case. For example, for now, suppose we give it a context like you're an adventurer exploring a mystical land who answers with short and happy answers. And actually, it can be a good idea to give it a rough amount of words to constrain the length of the answers. Then in our pointer-click function, when we've found our terrain type, we'll simply reuse our AI chat variable and call its say method. This is what actually sends an input to the ChatGPT bot via the ChatGPT API under the hood. And this abstracted interface returns two things for us. First, an error that can be nil or contain some info on why the call failed, if it did. And second, the answer of the chatbot, if there was one. So we're simply gonna take this response and use the nice Cubzh text bubble built in to have our player avatar show this little message above its head as a little temporary dialogue bubble. And that's basically it. If we republish our game, we see that now, as soon as we click on a block in the map, Our avatar thinks for a while and says a few words that depend on the type of terrain that we hit. And you see that this sentence will change ever so slightly every time, because it's generated automatically by ChatGPT and it uses the context that we passed in before. So we do get this happy explorer behavior that we expected. By the way, that's why if we decide to change our pre-prompt in the code and put something fairly different, like you're a gloomy explorer who is very scared and wary of everything and who answers with short, cautious answers, then after we republish, you see that the results are pretty different. Now, as a side note, a really cool thing with all of that is that because it's so easy to create a new ChatGPT conversation using Cubzh API, we could actually have some evolution in our player character. We could have it react to the environment and become even more joyful, or really sad, or really scared. So we could actually have the adventure that our avatar is living impact the way it reacts, which would really go a long way into making a more immersive and realistic game. And just as a side note, you can actually change the time that the text bubble stays on screen by changing this parameter in the code. But anyway, we now have a pretty good idea of how Cubzh text AI tool works. So now, time to talk about the second one, the one to create images. As you can imagine, it's aptly named AI:create image, and this time it relies on the famous dall-e model. So again, we simply need to pass it a prompt, and it will eventually give us back a quad with the image generated by the AI pasted on as a texture. Meaning that in the callback function of a call, we can simply use this new 3D object and add it somewhere in our scene. And we'll directly have an AI-generated image inside our Cubzh game. Typically, let's say that we want to extend our previous logic, so that if we use the action1 input, we switch from generating a text with ChatGPT to generating an image using dall-e. Then, whenever we click on a block, if we're in the image generation mode, we'll use Cubzh image AI tool to create a quad and place it between the block and our current position. So you see that here we're using the actual block type that we clicked on as a prompt, and then we get back the quad object with the image applied on it, and we add it and position it in the world. And here we are! You see that with just these few additional lines, we've super easily implemented direct image generation using AI. And by the way, we can even add some extra options to our call to AI:create_image, for example, to specify the size of the image to generate, or to force a pixel art style that better matches Cubzh's voxel art aesthetic. Another thing that's really cool is that because all of this is handled by Cubzh behind the scenes, you note that the AI APIs used in the backend will be updated regularly by the Cubzh team. In other words, you won't even have to change anything in your own Cubzh world script to automatically get more recent and more powerful AI tools. Actually, as a little bonus, you could even tell Cubzh ChatGPT-based AI tool to respect some given syntax and use it to auto-produce configuration for your scenes. Like in this really cool video that one of the Cubzh founders posted to show how to create skies and atmospheres for a Cubzh game using only AI. So as you can see, there's still a lot more to learn about Cubzh. That's why if you're interested, you should definitely go say hi on the Discord and join the community. And of course, feel free to like and share this